Welcome to the AARP Driver Safety Program webinar. Keep your safety in sight. Prepare for the effects of aging vision on driving with the American Optometric Association. I'm Julie Lee, and I'm the director of the AARP Driver Safety Program. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and first I'd like to introduce Dr. Paul Freeman. We're very excited to have him here with us this afternoon. So a little bit on his background. Dr. Freeman is a private practitioner who provides low vision rehabilitative services at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Keystone Blind Association in Sharon, Pennsylvania. As one of the founding members of the American Optometric Association's Low Vision Section, he served as its chairperson from 1987 to 1989. Dr. Freeman is also a low vision diplomate in the American Academy of Optometry and was chair of the diplomate program and low vision section of the AAO from 1989 to 1992. Dr. Freeman has received numerous awards, including the Pennsylvania Council for the Blind's Distinguished Service Award in 1996 and the State University of New York College of Optometry's William Feinblum Award in 1997, the Pittsburgh Business Times Healthcare Hero Award, Physician of the Year in 1997, and the American Optometric Association Low Vision Section's Vision Care Award in 1999. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Freeman to the AARP National Office here in Washington, D.C. to talk about vision and driving today. Dr. Freeman, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
You've often referred to driving as a sport. So could you tell us what that means? Why do you refer to driving as a sport?
Sure. I think that driving is a non-contact sport with the goal to go from one place to another without contact or encouraging penalties like fines, damage, or injuries. And sports typically require simultaneous processing, some fast, some slow. Driving is really no different, and that quote really says it all. Driving requires rapid response and the ability to carry out several activities at once, such as monitoring for hazards while steering and controlling the speed of the vehicle. Now, what's interesting about driving as a sport is we've got some variables that people who compete in sports don't necessarily have to deal with. And so we're looking at things like the changes in the field of play as an example. We see that there are changes in geography. Sometimes we have hills to deal with, valleys to deal with, curves to deal with. The surface may be different, hard top or gravel, and all of that will change the way we drive. In addition to that, we're looking at rural versus urban driving, light versus heavy traffic. That creates a problem in the amount of information to interpret and the speed and accuracy of having to drive using all of the senses. And because we're talking about vision, we're going to concentrate on that in driving safely. We're looking at playing in variable elements such as daytime versus nighttime and weather conditions. Those affect responses as well when we're thinking about driving, again, for speed and accuracy. And finally, using older equipment. Now, if you look at that slide all the way on the right, you'll see that most people think about older equipment as that equipment that we drive. But there's also some old equipment actually behind the wheel of the car, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. It's a very interesting approach, and we certainly all have all of those challenges across the country. And as you know, AARP is presenting this webinar because we know the population of Americans over the age 65 is growing and, of course, living much longer. Over the next 25 years, Americans 65 and older will increase in population by nearly 35 million people, moving from approximately 12% of the total population to 20%. Drivers 65 plus are our fastest growing age group on the road today. I think that's really very interesting that is a statistic that's out there. And by 2030, 1 in 4 drivers will be 65 and older. That means that we will have more than 30 million drivers age 65 plus on our roads real soon. But we also know drivers age 65 are safe drivers with really good driving records. So I want to get started before Dr. Freeman really gets into his presentation with a poll. We're going to start with a question, and we'll get that up. Okay, so we're going to take a poll, and here's the first question. We're going to have a couple of these during our webinar today. This will help us with our dialogue and the information that Dr. Freeman is going to share. So the first question here is, even for a healthy person, at what age does your vision start to change? So what you need to do is press on one of the buttons, pick the age that you think is the right answer, push on the button, and then hit the answer key. We'll give you a couple seconds to go ahead and take the poll. We're not seeing anybody respond. There we go. Okay, great. A couple more seconds. Super. Okay, so we can see from the poll that the overwhelming majority of you have selected the age 40. So I think that's very interesting. Dr. Freeman, can you give us some more insight on this?
Well, I think the listenership is right on the money. Vision equipment starts to change around 40 years of age. Where the primary change comes in is the lens in the eye. It becomes a little less flexible. Now, interestingly, we also notice that we start to slow down just a touch at age 40 as far as reaction time is concerned. But I think that was impressive, recognizing that at least at 40 the changes begin to start. Now, there are also some other changes that take place with our visual equipment, and we're going to discuss those over time. So as an example, we see that there's a decrease in contrast sensitivity. We also know there's an increased glare sensitivity and increased recovery time. We notice a decrease in color perception, the need for more light, the decrease in dynamic visual acuity, and we'll describe some of these later on, decrease in peripheral vision, and also difficulty in light and dark adaptation. Now, just to make sure that everybody's aware of what we're talking about, this is not to suggest that everybody's at risk. It's simply to point out that we need to pay attention and be able to manage those situations where these conditions can cause some challenges in driving. So if we look kind of at where some of these issues might occur, we start at the very front part of the eye. You'll see there that tear film starts to become unstable, and there's a little bit of a decreased production as we age. And that decrease creates sometimes some functional difficulties and possibly some comfort.
So, Dr. Freeman, does this mean your actual tear ducts, or is that what that means?
Well, it means that your eyes sometimes can dry out a little bit. The tears don't become stable. There are all sorts of methods whereby we can encourage people to either produce more tears or to make sure the tears are okay as far as being fully produced. We also have eye movements. There's slower reaction time with eye movements. Pupils get smaller, and this is really where we start to run into some of the more functional challenges. There's an increase. We need increased light. There's some decrease in contrast sensitivity, some decrease in color vision. The lens, which is what we just talked about, which begins to change at age 40. By about 60, almost everyone needs some sort of eyeglass prescription, specifically for close work. Where we run into some of the more functional challenges as well as the visual challenges is in cataracts, where there's a modification in contrast sensitivity, color vision, and just light gathering in general. We keep moving back as we're heading to the back part of the eye, the media, which is the jelly part of the eye. There's some opacities in there that can cause decreased transparency. And finally, we look at the retina, and in the retina, we start to see some changes. The most notable one, and one that I think that everybody is relatively familiar with these days, is a condition called macular degeneration that we might talk about a little bit later on. Finally, to kind of wrap all of this up, we know there's some demyelinization of nerves, which means that the processing speed of the nerves starts to decrease a bit.